Dobrodošli nazad, poštovani gledalci. Moj gost večeras je uvaženi profesor David PETTIGREW. Profesore, kako komentarišete direktnu intervenciju visokog predstavnika Kristijana Schmidta odluke Europskog suda za ljudska prava u Strasburu kada je u pitanju presuda Kovačević protiv Bosne i Hercegovine?
That's a troubling situation because it's one thing to, as we were talking about inaction, it'd be one thing to do nothing. It's another thing altogether to actually intervene to try to prevent the conclusion and implementation of the decisions of the European Court of Human Rights. And I think that's problematic because this is the effort of Bosnian citizens to have the constitution reformed as a kind of modern European democracy, and it's in some ways it's incomprehensible to me that the High Representative would try to prevent that process from taking place.
Zašto je predmet Kovačević protiv Bosne i Hercegovine izazvao takvu buru na BiH političkom terenu, posebice u redovima HDZ-a BiH? Koja je zapravo uloga Plenkovića i Dragana Čovića?
I think that the reaction of Mr. Plenković and Mr. Čović indicate to me how much they fear democracy, because they seem to be insisting, as I understand it, on this concept of what they call legitimate representation for ethnic Croats. But what I think they mean by legitimate representation is a nationalist representation, to ensure that they have a hardline nationalist in office. And so I think the idea that they would lose the grip that they would like to secure on a kind of nationalist position in Bosnia it causes them great anxiety. Because there was also an effort to establish a third entity in Bosnia. This was articulated by the Croatian Academy of Sciences and Arts. There was a couple of years ago this idea that they should create a third entity to protect the Croat minority from alleged persecution. And so I think this is what's operating. But ultimately, I think it's to try to secure what they call legitimate representation, to have a nationalist representation.
Ukoliko presuda bude potvrđena, da li bi nam mogla biti uzrok da se podijele dodatno političke stranke u Bosni i Hercegovini, posebice zbog ustavne reforme, i da li bi to moglo dodatno uzdrmati i onako slabe koalicione odnose u našoj zemlji?
I think that the question is, people worry about change, but I think that the goal here is modern representative democracy, where everyone has the same human rights, and I think that those who oppose it would be those who oppose it strenuously will be more exposed as nationalists. And so one would hope that in the process of that discussion, that the positions of those who oppose democracy would be weakened rather than the state or the coalition.
Da, osim svakodnevnih prijetnji miru iz Republike Srpske, svjedočimo i insistiranju lidera HDZ-a BiH Dragana Čovića na reformi izbornog zakona. Kako komentarišete takve intencije i zapravo udar na Ustav Bosne i Hercegovine?
Well, I think this is, I would say, similar to my previous response, because I think the agenda of Mr. Čović is again to try to secure what he calls legitimate representation, to further divide Bosnia and Herzegovina in the direction of establishing a third entity. So this is also, we were talking about this also seems like an attack on the Constitution.
Kada sumiramo ova prethodna pitanja i odgovore, šta mislite, može li Bosna i Hercegovina postati uređena demokratska zemlja dok su na snazi i vladaju učvršćene etničke podjele?
How can Bosnia become a more organized democratic country? Well, I think there are two things come to mind. First would be gradual implementation of the reforms. Of the reforms, but I meant to say gradual implementation of the judgments of the European Court of Human Rights. So this would be one logical approach. Another approach that would be something to consider would be to have a number of members, I suppose it would be of the Peace Implementation Council, charge the Venice Commission with drafting a new constitution. The Venice Commission, as I understand it, serves as an advisory capacity on constitutional matters for the EU. And so that would be the logical team of experts to ask to draft a constitution that would incorporate all of the judgments. It would be a European constitution. And then a commission could be established within Bosnia of academics and activists to review and work on this. So it would be a very practical step to have this draft by the Venice Commission that would be reviewed. Then moving it to political implementation would be the next step. But without something to talk about, we're just stuck in the Dayton model. And I think what is important to realize, and I was reminded of this when I was talking to the mothers of Srebrenica this morning, is that the current model is untenable because of the fact that Republika Srpska, declared itself as an ethnically homogeneous entity that carried out crimes including genocide to establish itself as an ethnically homogeneous entity, and then is recognized at Dayton. So that's, in a sense, rewarded for their crimes. So to me, this is unsustainable. It's immoral, unethical, unsustainable. So that it seems like the recognition of that in 2025 should drive constitutional reform, and it's the important vision that's required here. I think that's an important question. But I think the steps are there. The European Court of Human Rights, involving the Venice Commission, a commission of academics, intellectuals, and activists, and citizens would be a way to start.
Prolazi li Bosna I Hercegovina kroz svojevrsnu krizu suvereniteta?
Yes, I think that it's a crisis of sovereignty because of on the one hand, the declaration of the All-Serb Assembly to unite all Serbs in the region, also the constant claims that we discussed, the constant threats by Mr. Dodik, that secession is taking place. I think he said yesterday, everybody knows it already, it's the goal. On the other hand, the idea of having a third entity. And I think that it's a reaction of nationalists, and revisionists to the truth, to the adoption of the resolution, the General Assembly resolution on the Srebrenica genocide, and also reactions to the possibility of democracy. I think autocrats or dictators fear democracy. And so it's definitely a crisis of sovereignty.
Koliko zapravo nacionalističke stranke bosanskih Srba I Hrvata u suštini izoluju bošnjačku većinu?
Well, I think this was the effect of the Dayton peace agreement. In a sense, say the Bosniak representatives agreed in good faith on a kind of power sharing arrangement. And that good faith hasn't been returned in time, so that the majority, demographic majority, is challenged by demographic minorities who are trying to exert more control. And I think the importance, I think President Izetbegovic has stated this constantly. The importance is to ensure a sovereign state with equal human rights for all citizens, to think in terms of citizens rather than minorities, majorities, or ethnic groups, to try to move in that direction, which is another reason that the constitutional and democratic reforms are so important. But currently the emphasis is on vital interest in veto power. When I was studying the Kovačević case recently, I was reminded that I think it's the House of Peoples basically exists to exercise veto power, and that seems untenable for a democratic future.
Profesore PETTIGREW, za kraj ovog razgovora recite nam koliko smo u Bosni i Hercegovini zapravo opterećeni prošlošću, a istovremeno zanemarujemo vizije budućnosti.
Thank you. That's a very good question, specifically in the context of Bosnia and Herzegovina. But I think that it's important for a vision for the future to embrace the past authentically, to recognize the truth of what happened in the past, and then to have a shared understanding of the past from which a vision of the future would spring. So there wouldn't be a contradiction or tension. In other words, you achieve a vision of the future through an authentic relation to the past, to prevent denial, to encourage education. And let's say, memory is an important part of transitional justice. The UN Commission on Transitional Justice said that without memory, there's no truth, there's no justice. And without memory, truth, and justice, then there's no guarantee of the reoccurrence of the genocide. So it's important to have a shared understanding of the truth of the past in order to prevent it from occurring in the future. This was the subject of another UN resolution, I think in 2022, that commended member states who preserved Holocaust concentration camps to educate the current and future generations precisely to prevent the repetition of genocide. And that's why I think it's so important to focus on memory and memorials, not just on constitutional reforms, for example, which would be important, or reforming the state, but respecting the memory of the victims. Because in a place like Kalinovic at Barutni magazine, where the memorial has been prohibited and the former concentration camp is being used as a barn by local residents, which is an insult to the memory of the victims, and you have the mural for Ratko Mladic up the road, which should be removed. But I think this is something that's extremely important to survivors of the genocide and other war crimes in Kalinovic. So that's why I think dealing with the past is the way to move forward towards truth and properly remembering the victims. One could say that we shouldn't, forget what has never been properly remembered in some sense. So I'm inspired by the mothers of Srebrenica and thank them for their advocacy. Also, people like Bakira Hasecic, who's advocated for the truth of what happened in Visegrad, and Samir Vranovic from Kalinovic. So these are important people to help Bosnia move towards the future while remembering the past. So thank you for that question.
Hvala vama još jednom što ste izvolili vrijeme da govorite za Hayat televiziju.
Thank you.
Hvala i vama, poštovani gledalci, za pažnju. Ostanite i dalje uz program Hayat televizije. Doviđenja.